Um,
Okay, let's get started.
okay. So hello to everyone. My name is Derek Davis. I am the co-founder of Tabby and the Shared Economy CPA. I'm putting those links in the comment section right now for everyone to see. So what we're going to go over is some general tax tips and deductions that we can take as 1099 independent contractors to help you guys kind of save more money to mitigate the amount of taxes that you'll end up owing. So let's jump into the presentation. Is this being recorded? So we can, okay, so we'll broadcast this afterwards. Okay.
It's being recorded. It's being broadcasted.
Broadcast as well as being recorded?
Yeah.
Okay. Screen share.
But we can delete.
Okay.
I think
Yeah, let me.
we can add YouTube links.
Okay.
PowerPoint.
Yeah.
But actually, got to show.
Yeah. So let's see. I think. Well, I think I've done this once before. So we go here and then we go here.
Screen share. You see screen share?
Yeah. Kind of sharing your screen with
okay.
Yeah. Okay. So if anyone has any sort of questions, please feel free to type them in the box, or
tweet #ShareGrind.
Or tweet #ShareGrind. And yeah, we'll go from there. So this is kind of just an open-ended discussion that we're having. If you have any questions, always please feel free to reach out and ask. What we're going to go over is kind of do some introductions. We'll talk about the tax forms. We'll talk about calculating what you owe, as well as tax tips. And then we'll briefly cover business expenses, tools, as well as a kind of general Q&A at the end. So let me get my, let's see. So before we get started, one more thing up. Okay, so let's get back to the screen share. So just a little bit about me. I'm a CPA. I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in California. I studied accounting. I did 3 years of transfer pricing, which is a subset of tax at Deloitte & Touche, as well as 2 years at PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I quit at the end of September 2014 to join the sharing economy. So with that, let's get started. So for those of you that do or don't know, the ACA Obamacare, this is the first year that they're going to start issuing penalties if you did not have health insurance for 1 or 2 consecutive months of 2014. So here are some exemptions that are available to you if you want to try to get out of the ACA penalty. I believe the minimum for 2014 tax filing year is $95, and then for 2015 as well as 2016, it's going to dramatically increase. So here are some kind of exemptions that you can try to apply for to get out of the ACA penalty. So for those of you who are Airbnb hosts, specifically, there's kind of 2 different tax forms that you would want to kind of look at to determine where you want to put your Airbnb income, and that's either the Schedule C or Schedule E. Some important things to note: that if you are a Schedule C filer, you will have to pay self-employment tax as well as personal income tax. And if you are a Schedule E filer, you do not have to pay self-employment tax. So the more obvious kind of question is why would I pay more self-employment tax? And the answer generally lies on if you also have W-2 income. So if you do have W-2 income and you have a loss from your Schedule C Airbnb activity, you can net some of those losses against your gain. And what that will do is that will kind of reduce your overall effective tax rate. So those are kind of some considerations to think about in determining whether to put your activity on Schedule C or Schedule E. To also kind of help determine that, you'd also want to look at the material participation test that's governed by the IRS. I briefly cover that in my website, sharedeconomycpa.com. So if you're looking for some free resources to kind of help determine where you lie, I would definitely check that out. So, kind of going along with the Schedule C and Schedule E forms, what will happen is that these forms will then tie into your 1040. So the net income or loss that's recorded.
Is this the tax thing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. People,
Yeah.
We decided, it's also a webinar, so.
Yeah. So just pull. We're broadcasting live right now.
So if you want to ask questions, you can ask us.
Yeah. So the two kind of forms to take into consideration: Schedule SE, that's for self-employment tax. So why that form is important is that if you are a Schedule C tax filer and you are putting your income and losses on your Schedule C, you'll also be subject to Schedule SE, which is your self-employment tax. And if you are putting your Airbnb income on Schedule E, you will not be subject to the self-employment tax form. And one thing that's important to note, and I believe I had said this before, is that your net income, which is your revenue minus your expenses for your Airbnb activity, the net amount that's recorded on either your Schedule C or Schedule SE will then flow into your 1040. So it's important to note that whatever is being reported to you by Airbnb needs to match identical on your tax forms. Reason being is that Airbnb will send those tax forms to you as well as to the Internal Revenue Service. And what the IRS will then do is they'll line up the two numbers, and if they don't match identically, then they'll send you a letter. So it's really important that you report all income, but you can definitely be more flexible on your deductions. Another important thing to note is that on your 1099 given to you by Airbnb, you will not have you'll not have any withholdings taken out. So what is shown on there, you are expected to owe tax on the full amount. Another little kind of tax deduction tip and tidbit is that there's a 3% fee that's being taken out by Airbnb, which is shown on your dashboard. So what's being recorded on your dashboard is the net amount that's being paid out to you. However, on your 1099, it's going to record the gross amount, so the total amount of earnings. So you need to make sure that you're appropriately deducting that 3% fee that Airbnb is taking out as a commission fee. So that's just a little tidbit that you need to check out. So you make sure that you aren't overpaying your tax. So here is a hypothetical example of $35,000 in 1099 taxable income. If you are a single filer, note that your self-employment tax, and this is assuming that you are doing Airbnb full-time as a full-time profession, and you fall on Schedule C activity. So your self-employment tax will be approximately $5,000. And how that amount is computed is the $35,000 multiplied by 92.35%, which is an amount that's governed by the IRS, times 15.3%, which is the actual self-employment tax rate. If you're using any sort of tax software to prepare your taxes, it's important to understand what goes in these forms, because if you don't, you're going to get an amount that TurboTax, for example, is telling you that you owe, and you're going to be really shocked that that number is really high. So it's important to understand, what goes into these forms, so you don't get shocked, and you also don't overpay the amount of tax that you would not already owe. So right below that, you have your personal income tax, which is $22,000, and how that number is derived is the $35,000 minus your single filing standard deduction, which is $6,200 for 2014, minus your single exemption, which is approximately $3,500, minus half of your self-employment tax. So your self-employment tax is approximately $5,000, and half of that, approximately $2,500, is actually tax deductible. So the total amount of taxes that you're paying is a little south of $8,000. So that's a lot of money. So this is assuming that you have no business expenses, and you're just scrambling at tax time trying to figure out how much tax you owe. So it's really important to keep track of your business expenses, which we'll go over in future slides.
Asking if someone can comment. If you can comment.
Yeah, we have a comment right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. It says this feature is disabled. Where's the comment coming in?
Here. Here. I don't see.
Only seeing agenda. I'm not seeing this. Oh, I see. Okay.
Take me there.
Only seeing agenda. Let's see. Featured is disabled. Okay, can they see me now?
Yes, you should position for face. In a minute. Hold on.
Okay. I think this should work. There's too many tabs open. All right. I should probably continue the presentation.
Yep.
Okay.
Or people there.
Yeah. So let's see. Okay, so can everyone see?
I'm checking. Let's continue.
Okay, so it's really important to kind of keep track of your tax deductions.
Let me see if you got the sound. Sorry. You have to do this.
Yeah, that's fine.
Where we go? Here. Okay.
Okay. So let's see. So it's really important to keep track of your your tax deductions, especially if you're filing this late in the game, which you maybe are since you're attending this webinar. Because if you do not keep track of your business expenses, you're going to be potentially overpaying the amount of tax that you would not already pay. So here's a hypothetical example of scenario one, which was given before, which shows a single filer with no business expenses, and scenario two, which also shows the same demographics, 35,000 in 1099 taxable income, and single filer. But this person kept really good track of their business expenses, and they owe approximately 1,700 in taxes. So their overall effective tax rate on their net earnings is about 5% as opposed to 22%. So it's really important to keep track of business expenses. So for those of you who are wondering, this is according to IRS publication 585. What are business expenses? So pretty much business expenses are operating to make a profit. And what I mean by that is if you have 3 years of Schedule C operating losses, that can generally trigger an IRS audit. The reason being is that the IRS will then tell you that you're operating to make a loss, and that is a hobby and not a business. So kind of the real main goal of this of business expenses are that they help you to make an actual profit. So specifically, what can you deduct? So to be deductible, an expense needs to be both ordinary and necessary. So ordinary is one that's common in your industry. So as an Airbnb host, an ordinary business expense would be bed sheets, pillows, linens, and other things of that nature. However, those that are ordinary for Airbnb hosts won't be ordinary for, say, a chef. A chef may want to start deducting food, and they also may want to deduct their pots and pans and other things of that nature. And additionally, a business expense must be necessary. So what necessary means is that it's helpful for you and appropriate for your trade or business. So kind of here are some examples of business expenses. So you may incur any sort of clothing or uniform necessary to perform your job duties. So say you are an Airbnb host and you have to clean your bathrooms, and so you have to buy a special apron that allow you to scrub the toilets and bathtub. That may then be considered a necessary business expense. Food and beverage, that's really big for Airbnb hosts. So if you buy any sort of yogurts, any sort of early morning breakfast foods, that can also be considered deductible. Are people having an issue with it?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, and I haven't like complaint yet. So.
Okay. Another great tax deduction are laptops and cell phone usages. So for the bulk of people, you're talking to your guests using your cell phone or your computer. And those are also great tax deductions that you can also take. And how you would want to deduct your cell phone is your proportionate usage. So say, for example, you're using your phone half the time for business to talk to a potential guest. That's what you want to deduct. Car, this is a great one. You'd want to either take actual costs, so your gas, your oil, your maintenance, or you'd want to take your standard mileage deduction, which I believe is 56 cents for 2014. So how that would work out is that if you are driving to, say, Trader Joe's to buy some food for your guests, or you're driving to Target to buy some bed sheets or linens, you would want to keep track of those mileages as well as deduct that. Home, so your rent may be one of your biggest kind of business expenses. And what the tax courts had in 2006 ruling is that you need to have your space exclusively rented out for Airbnb hosting purposes. So say, for example, you have a room that you rent out occasionally when you're out of town. According to the 2006 tax court ruling, they had disallowed any sort of rent expense. So what is deductible rent? Currently speaking, if you have a 2-bedroom house or apartment and you rent out one room exclusively as an Airbnb listing, then the tax courts have then considered that that can be deductible, that being your rent. Another great thing would be, any sort of electric and utilities and other things of that nature. And how you'd want to deduct that is a proportionate share of your business activities. And there's definitely other costs directly related to your business.
Just repositioning your mic.
Reposition my mic
Yep.
so they can hear me.
Yes.
I'm sure they can probably hear me now. And then you also have other costs that are directly related to your business that can also be considered tax deductible. So the last thing we're going to go over are some kind of business expenses, and we're just going to kind of talk through the process of how you'd want to write those off. So say, for example, you have Office Max expenses that you want to try to write off. So one thing that you want to probably make note of is how these Office Max expenses relate to your business. So, you'd want to say, I bought supplies, any sort of paper, pencils, other things that you'd purchase. Yeah. You'd want to try to deduct those. Subway. So this is kind of this falls under meals and entertainment. So if you have any sort of business meals where, say, you go out to lunch with a friend and you talk about your Airbnb hosting activities and how it's kind of providing you supplemental income, and your friend is thinking about also getting involved in Airbnb, you could potentially write off those meals. But please note that these meals are at 50%. So, this Subway meal, for example, you want to write off approximately $3.15. And I know that seems like a small amount, but the more meals and entertainment you have that are tax deductible, the more your deductions are, and the less tax you end up paying. So if you have any sort of parking meter fees, these are also great kind of auto expenses. So say you go to a meetup for Airbnb host and you want to write off those expenses, these are also great tax deductions. So here's kind of a free app that we launched for 1099 independent contractors and Airbnb hosts that allow you to link up all your credit and debit cards safely and securely, and then you could easily swipe right or left if your expenses are business, and you could see on the bottom of the screen it shows how much you can write off. So the more business expenses you have, the more deductions you have, and the less tax that you end up paying. So I guess with that, let's go to some kind of Q&A questions. Here's my contact information. I'm going to leave this up for about a minute. If anyone has any direct questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. And with that, I guess I'll go to the Q&A.
Yes, go to Q&A, and then mention that we'll have this archived on YouTube.
Okay, so for those of you that were wondering, this event will be archived and YouTube. On YouTube. So let's see.
Let me just look for what's mortgage tax deductible.
Yeah. So so for those of you that have questions, how can they ask?
Here.
All right. So are rents or mortgage cost deductible? So generally speaking, if your room or Airbnb location is exclusively used for business, And so what I mean by that is that you have it exclusively listed on Airbnb. It doesn't mean that it has to be rented out 24/7, but it has to be exclusively used. Then you can deduct a proportionate share of that rental expense.
Square footage?
Yeah, so how you want to calculate that is based on square footage. And that would be, yeah, your rental expense. Is there a way for other people to ask questions?
Yeah, the comment. Tell people to comment. You know.
Yeah, so if you guys have any other additional questions or comments you want to ask, actually hashtag Tabby Tax, and then I'll look at my Twitter inbox. So just go hashtag on Twitter Tabby Tax, and I will look at that right now if you have any specific tax questions.
What about common areas like kitchens and things that your guests are having access to?
Yeah, so generally speaking, it has to be exclusively used. So for our tax clients that we have helped out, if they have like a separate house, then you would then want to deduct that proportionate share of the overall space. But if it's common area, according to 2006 tax court ruling, the courts haven't upheld your tax deductions.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'm looking at the Twitter feed right now, hashtag being Tabby Tax. And let's see. Okay, so there are no tweets right now. So are there any other questions coming through that I can help answer? Do you have any questions?
For vacation rentals, so you're saying if you have a place, if you have a house that maybe part of the year, like maybe a third of the year you're using for vacation rentals, you can't deduct that then?
So a third of the year. Oh, so that's another special thing to note that.
Like for example, if you have a house, you're gone, a third of the year you're renting it out. The rest of the time you're not there. You're gone during that period of time to have the whole house, let's say.
Yeah. So closer. So yeah. So that's a really great question. So. Yeah, so for those of you that have like a vacation rental or you have a short-term rental, if it's rented less than 15 days of the year, you do not have to pay self-employment tax, or you do not have to pay personal income tax on that rental property. So, if you have it, only a few days out of the year, you'd want to add up those days to see if you do qualify to exclude that from your personal income tax. But if the question is that you have it rented out a third of the year when you're not there and you're living in it in the other half, generally speaking, according to this one tax court ruling in 2006, which is unfortunately the only precedent that's been set, at least right now, is that those rents are you cannot deduct those rents because they're not exclusively used, and that's based on the let me make a side caveat note that because Airbnb is so new, there isn't too much precedent. So the only court cases or tax cases that they're currently referencing are in regards to Airbnb, or excuse me, bed and breakfast, mom and pop shops.
She mentioned that you should show some of the things on the screen.
Show some of the things on the screen.
Yes. Okay. Screen share.
The PowerPoint slide?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Was there a specific screen that they wanted?
Yep. So I guess the more screen share, this way you can do the search.
Okay. Okay. Let's see if there's any other messages that are coming in. So, okay, so the next question that came in. Oh.
Okay, sorry. I heard my an LLC. Can I pay health insurance through business and employee? Will that be a business write-off?
So the question is she pays for her personal?
It's an LLC, and she pays her health insurance through my.
Okay.
I mean, if it's an S corp, right?
Yeah.
LLC corp, I mean, the LLC will do that.
Yeah. So generally speaking, on your Schedule C, you would want. So this question really relates to how is the LLC being taxed? Is the LLC being taxed as a pass-through entity, so you are just recording all your income and losses on your Schedule C, or is the LLC taxed as a C corp? Generally speaking, if you're an LLC taxed as a C corp, you're going to get double tax. You're going to pay corporate tax as well as personal income tax. So that's usually not favorable. So to directly answer your question, it depends. So if you're a LLC with a pass-through entity, you would actually want to record those expenditures on your 1040. The insurance that you'll see on your Schedule C is insurance that does not. It will say insurance other than health. So those insurance expenditures would actually be recorded on the 1040, not your Schedule C. The next question that we just received right now is, I'm a renter, everything applies. Use Schedule C or E or C. Rental, everything applies. If you could please kind of clarify, Victoria, what everything means, that might help a little bit more. And then use Schedule E or Schedule C. It really depends on the 7-point material participation test. That kind of goes through what type of services and benefits that you provide to the guests. So say, for example, you have a property in Florida and you have a management company that handles all your bookings, all the cleaning, and you just receive a paycheck. Generally speaking, that would be Schedule E activity. However,
Credit card payment, by the way, enough to prove expense?
Okay, that's a really good question. So what proves a business expense? So according to IRS publication 463, to substantiate a business expense, you need to have the name, the date, the amount, and the essential business characteristic of the expense. You actually do not need to keep receipts. Keeping receipts is one of the biggest urban myths out there. You just need to have So Natasha asked, the next question is, what's a business code for short-term rentals? So I'm going to quickly show everyone the Shared Economy CPA website, because we have all the codes for everyone operating in the Shared Economy listed on the website. So to specifically answer your question, for Airbnb hosts, for home sharing, there are a couple different ones that you can choose from. One of them is 721100, which is travel accommodations, including hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts. We personally recommend 721310, which is rooming and boarding houses.
Someone wants to know about an S corp with expense.
The S corp. Oh, and for everyone that's tweeting us, we're retweeting just to show our tabby love.
And add share grind to it.
And add shared grind hashtag, please. That would be helpful. So yeah. What's the next question?
Someone asked about credit card. About record proof of expenses. What counts as proof of expenses?
Yeah. So to I think I already answered that question.
Yes, but
Okay, so just kind of to reiterate, there's 4 criteria that the IRS will look at if they come in to question your business expenses, which is you need to show the name. So where did you buy it? Target, for example, the date, I bought it on February 1st, the amount, I spent $55, and what's the essential business characteristic. So you can say I bought bed sheets for my guests. So that would be a perfect example of a business expense.
Now, I think this is going to just let people know that this is going to be archived on YouTube if they go to sharegrowing.com/videos.
Okay, so for those of you who weren't able to attend the event, or well, obviously you're attending the event, but for those of you who'd want to review the event, go back, touch up on any sort of topics, it's going to be on sharegrind.com/videos.
And if you tweet hashtag ShareGrind, will answer the questions.
Yeah, and if you tweet ShareGrind, we will answer any sort of questions, or hashtag ShareGrind. We will answer any questions. So I think with that, I think we are about closing to an end, unless there are any other questions that are out there. Now's your last chance to ask before we close up the seminar. I'll do a quick refresh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And show the website, show Tabby, and show the
Yeah. So the website for Tabby, it's trytabby.com. Yes. Yeah, so here is the website for Tabby. All you have to do is enter your phone number and we'll send you a link to download the app. If you have any questions, that's probably the easiest way to make sure you are getting all the deductions possible. And it's all in compliance with IRS rulings. So each card that pops up will clearly show the name, the date, the amount, and then you would just add in a little comment box, and then sharegrind.com.
And we're opening a local chapter.
And we're opening local chapters, and I'm assuming recruiting ambassadors. Yeah, and ShareGrind is opening local chapters, and they're looking for ambassadors. And it's going to be the premier publication for all sharing economy related topics. So I guess with that, yeah, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Here is my contact info. Thank you all.